I sold a shit ton of gear a couple months ago. It just felt like in terms of function, it was time to let go of a bunch of overlapping gear. And so that was a whole process. And here's a link to that video in case you are interested. My main reinvestments were the SSL Big Six. This is such a beast, this thing, I love it. As well as the Analog Rytm Mark II. I also reinvested in the Digitac 2, which I have done a few videos on. Here's another link to that. But the main focus of this video will be on the Big Six, as well as the Analog Rytm Mark II. This was also a very calculated pivot in terms of where I'm going creatively, and especially the combination of these two together. There's also been some very pleasant surprises, in particular exploring the Big Six. Before getting into that though, I've cultivated a very active and positive, like good vibes Discord server. We're constantly inspiring each other with new gear finds, new music that we're creating. It's just like a cesspool of synthy joy. I also have a Patreon where I regularly post extended versions of videos or full-on exclusive videos, including the extended version of this video where the extension will be going into how I use effect sends from my DAW with the Big Six. Plenty more as well, and there's plenty more that I'm working on. So if that's something that you're interested in, we'd love to have you there as well. Let's look into why I made these purchase decisions. By the way, there's no gear sponsorship here going on. This is all gear that I purchased with my own money because I knew that it would just fit the direction that I'm personally going in. We'll start with the Analog Rytm Mark II. This is a drum machine. You could of course use it for other things as well, but in comparison to the other elektron stuff, like maybe the Digitac 2 or the Octatrack, where people tend to use it in more of a compositional way, I see the Analog Rytm Mark II being used specifically for drums for whatever reason. It just works so well as a drum machine. And I love drum machines. You guys know that. At this point, I actually don't know the Analog Rytm inside out, but for the way that I'm using it in this sort of techno-y, loopy, production-y sort of way, it is for sure my favorite drum machine that I've worked with thus far. And so why? Why not something like the TR-8S, which is another drum machine that I've worked with a bunch? Why not the Digitac 2? Okay, well, let's make some comparisons here. The TR-8S is a monster. It's an audio interface. It is a killer Ableton Live controller. It's also obviously just a really good standalone drum machine that you see so many people using, packed with all of the classic Roland drum sounds that I love, and they keep including new vintage drum machines into the unit, added with a technology called ACB, analog circuit behavior, so it sort of behaves like an analog circuit, and you can control certain parameters much like the analog drum machines. And actually in some cases, like with the CR78, that's an old Roland drum machine, they actually enhance the amount of controls that you have in comparison to the OG unit within the TR-8S. And by the way, if you'd like to look deeper into all the things I just described about the TR-8S, here's a video for you. And for all of those specific reasons that I just mentioned, I think that the TR-8S is actually better than the Analog Rytm Mark II. It also has 8 individual outs, just like the Analog Rytm. It's also a much more affordable unit. And so where does this bad boy, where does he win? Well, there's quite a few reasons. The one that I want to focus on is just the sequencing capabilities of this thing. It's exponentially stronger as a sequencing unit. It gives you so much room for creativity and flexibility within your sequences, much more precision within your sequences. And by the way, the other elektron units share the same sequencer, more or less, so that's something to consider. All and any of these parameters here are assignable to any specific step with any given channel or voice on the Analog Rytm. On top of that, I'm not even sure what the parameter per step limit is. I've never reached it, so it's never stopped me creatively in any way. You just don't get that with any other drum machine that I know of. If there's any other ones that you can compare to this, please let us know in the comments or let us know on Discord. There's also a nudge function. So here we'll play this groove, and on this specific track, the rim shot, let's go in and nudge these around a little bit. Give them a little bit of swag. So it's a subtle difference maybe, but you have access to that sort of subtlety, which it really does change the game. Like I said, it just gives you so much more precision. Let's say on this last rim shot, we'll go to the effects and add a bunch of delay on it, maybe reverb. Maybe bring it back on the grid. Open up the other voices. That's another thing too, is just how tactile the unit is, especially for muting and unmuting voices. You got your pads here, which is great. The TR-8S doesn't have this function. You're locked into that quantized sound if you're using the standalone unit. The Analog Rytm also has a mixture of sampled sounds on this page right here, or analog sounds. So for example, the kick, I always use the analog kick because I love the way it sounds. There's different types of analog kicks that you could go with, maybe like a hard kick. Let's hear what this one sounds like. Classic, right? So you could just run through all these, and they all have their different parameters that you could play around with. Hard, maybe tune it a little bit. Add some tick. Decay, make it a longer kick. Snap. In general, so far, the analog sounds that I really like are the kick. The rim shot is amazing. And once again, with the rim shot, you have different choices here. I always go usually with the rim shot hard. The toms, these are all great. This I use as a bass a lot of times. If I take the noise off of it, you could sort of make a bass sound out of that. And the sounds that I do find myself using samples for are more the higher end sounds. So like perky, high perks, hi-hats, stuff like that. I do find that the analog hi-hat sounds are oftentimes a little bit too old school for me. It sounds like maybe I'm just using an 808. If you want to step into something that sounds a bit more modern, of course you could just throw a sample over that. On top of this, you could mix in the amount of sample versus the amount of analog sound. So you could really sound design everything. If you're into the rhythmic sequencing game, that is just on lock. And to have the sound design features to be just as strong, it makes the Analog Rytm an actual powerhouse. And to make another comparison with another piece of gear I recently invested in, the Digitac 2, in terms of workflow and fluidity between these two units, for me, the Digitac 2 is just absolutely unbeatable. Also, with some of the new features, they've included machines per channel, so you could have each channel be a MIDI channel versus a audio channel, so you could get the standalone MIDI hybrid thing going on there. And in that case, the Digitac 2 pretty much instantly becomes the better brain in this comparison. They introduced some new sound design effects as well as effect sends. Personally, I really like that sort of bit reduction-y or sample reduction that they've added to the unit. The reason why I keep going to the Analog Rytm Mark II is because it has individual outs on top of everything else that it adds. If the D2 had individual outs, I would not even have considered the Analog Rytm Mark II. For me, it's just a spec that is specific to my vision, and it was sort of a non-negotiable to me. So let's turn over to the Big Six now. This is a mixer, an audio interface. It's an instrument. Is it useful for something like in a live setting, like maybe in comparison to the Model 1.4, a mixer that I've raved about for years? I still haven't really figured out the answer to that question. The main reason just being the size of the unit. It doesn't feel like a unit that you go and perform with live and start bringing to venues. I don't know. That being said, for what it's actually capable of, this thing is quite compact. I will definitely say that, in my opinion, it's a much more flexible unit than the Model 1.4 because it's got its foot in the production DAW world and the hardware mixer performing world. And I've been using it extensively in both of these ways, which we'll be getting into. You can very seamlessly bounce back and forth with which function you're using it for. So for example, to tie it in with how I've been using it along with the Analog Rytm Mark II, in terms of the audio routing, it's actually not currently set up in this way, but this combination along with a bunch of effects pedals has become pretty much the closest that I have been or possibly will ever be to like a modular sort of approach, a modular synth sort of approach. Individual outs from the Analog Rytm, some of which are going just dry into the Big Six, while others are being routed first through texture effects pedals and then going into the Big Six. In terms of what effects that I've decided to choose, that's like a whole other video topic. I'm still on the fence about doing that video. If that's something that you would be interested in, please let us know in the comment section. I am in the process of creating a drum multi-track sample pack. And so the pedals that I've been gravitating towards have definitely been more in like the texture, drier based realm. So kind of like lo-fi textures. So generation loss, basically anything from Fairfield circuitry. So Roger That has been one of my go-tos definitely. Chroma consoles, another one I've been using. And so the point, the workflow of this setup is that an individual voice has the character of whatever effects pedal that it's going through, and that's being printed into the Big Six and then directly into my DAW onto a stem, right? And so far it's been great. I've gotten results like this. After this live sort of process, I have 8 stems that are waiting in my DAW ready to be mixed. That's why I've gone to such financial lengths to acquire this sort of setup. I knew I wanted to take a shot at creating samples, not just for other people to use, but for myself to use in my own music and to capture it live in that sort of sequencer, hardware, effects. So far the pack definitely has that live sort of sound, and it's very much focused on drums. And on top of that, maybe most importantly, it's such a fun setup to explore. You gotta be having fun when you're doing this stuff. And speaking about performing, let's talk about bringing the Big Six over into the performance/mixer world. So far, we've been talking about it as an audio interface. To me, this is the part that's been surprising. Like, I knew going into it that I could use the Big Six as a dub performance mixer, but once I actually tried it out and discovered just how fluid that workflow actually is, that's the part that was really surprising to me. So let's say you use the Big Six in just the way that I mentioned, using it as a production tool, bounce everything into your DAW. After, let's say the stems are mixed, you can very seamlessly sum that all up into one master track, using the effect sends here to like perform something in that dub sort of fashion. I could of course repurpose my hardware effects pedals, maybe something like a delay. I have the ecosystem right here. I could use that as a hardware effect send, sum that all up into the master track. But what I've been taking advantage of mostly for convenience is using software effects like plugins through my DAW and then sending those out to my effect sends. It's a very intriguing setup with the Big Six just because of how simple and convenient it actually is. We get into the ins and outs of that in the extended version of this video, and that's linked over in my Patreon. Here's a link to my Patreon if you want to go check that out. Combining hardware with software is a topic that I've touched on in past videos, and I just find that it's the best of both worlds because you get the convenience, the affordability of using software, and then you have an amazing sounding analog mixer with some extra controls here. You've got, some basic EQ and then your effect sends. It's just the perfect combination, especially for this dub sort of setting. That being said though, with this particular setup, there is an advantage of going a step further into the hardware route if you're routing external effects into the mixer. And actually, this is something that someone from my Discord mentioned. So the Discord member said, try this with your favorite analog delay. Instead of merely throwing tracks to the effects, route the output of the return back to another track. Use this fader to control the feedback and use the EQs to shape the tone. So you could really feed back your delay. You just have a bit more control over that feedback. Again, more tactility within your performance or even within your production, perhaps. I've been testing out this software effects and method with the weekly Instagram clips performances that I do. Here's another example. This is definitely not a sound that I would have stumbled upon without the use of this audio interface / mixer. And by the way, if you're watching this video, there's a good chance that you might be producing your own music, possibly your own techno music. Well, I'm here to show you how to distribute that music to major streaming platforms at a very affordable price using DistroKid. Here's a few reasons why they're great and why I've been using them for close to a decade now. In terms of what's new, they recently released a smartphone app, which makes checking your important DistroKid stats easy and accessible. The app is now available on Android through the Play Store. Essentially everything that you've been able to do on the DistroKid desktop app, you're now able to do through your smartphone. In fact, here's a list of key features that the app offers you. You might want to pause it now if you want to check them out. In today's day and age, we all know how many hats we have to wear as artists and producers. It can just be a lot, so write the music, produce the music. Then you've got to create content to promote it a few weeks before it's released. Then you've got to continue creating content after it's been released to promote it. It's a lot, and I'm not saying that DistroKid does all of this work for you, but they do make it a lot easier for us with the free promotional tools that they offer. The one I use most is Hyperfollow. It's essentially a free landing page or link tree. It's super clean. You could link maybe your latest video, your latest single, other important links you'd like to lead people to. I also use promo cards whenever I release a single. Just select the single that you would like to promote and it'll auto-generate a few different options for you to choose from. Go with DistroKid. It's just over $20 a year to release unlimited music to all major streaming platforms. You keep 100% of your streaming royalties. So many other tools that they offer for someone who's independent. They're made for us. And there is a discount linked in the description of this video if you would like to join. That's what I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate you being here. If you have any questions or comments, do not hesitate to leave them in the comment section of this video. If you're a chatty forum person, Discord. If you'd like to show some extra support, Patreon. Thanks again for being here and hope to see you soon.